Hi, I'm Jacob Wagner. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create this smoky text transition using After Effects and Cloners+Effectors. If you never heard about Cloners+Effectors before, it's a procedural plugin for After Effects that allows you to do a large number of animations and effects that would otherwise be very time-consuming and very difficult to do. You can go to ascripts.com/Cloners+Effectors and you can download a free trial, or you can of course purchase it. Alright, let's get started with the tutorial. In this scene, the only thing I have is one text field that says smoky text, and I'm using a rather bold font. I recommend that for this smoke transition because it will give you a lot more pixels to work with. The first thing we want to do is we want to split the text field apart so that we have every letter on its own layer. And we're going to do that with the text splitter that comes with Cloners+Effectors. The only thing that's really important is that you select the center point here. So I'm going to select that and I'm going to click Split It. As you can see, that's going to give us all the letters on their own layers. What we want to do now is we want to take all those layers and put them inside a cloner system. So I'm going to select all of the layers and I'm going to click Add Cloner. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the type from being the default linear to be cluster. As you can see, all the letters are now exactly where they were to begin with, when they were just one text field. This blue icon right here is the cloner layer that we have created down here. You probably want to disable it just by switching its eye off. It's not going to do anything except it's going to hide this blue icon. So now we're ready to animate all these letters. And we do that by adding an effector. And let's just set some of the settings on this effector already. It's a plane effector, that's great. The fall off we will set to be linear. The curve we will set to sine. And then the curve we only want it on the outside. So we're going to switch off the inside. What we want is we want the letters, as they turn into smoke, we want them to go up in the air. So we know we're going to be affecting the position. So in properties, we're going to turn on position. We also know we want them to fade out. So we want to change their opacity. So in properties, we also turn on opacity. In the effects controls, you should now see the plane effector controls and the linear fall off controls. If you are not seeing this, you should just select the effector layer that has been created down here, and you can see the settings. The size we're going to set to something much wider, probably, I don't know, something like this. If we have a look at our finished file real quick, we can see that the letters are supposed to come from the bottom and then slowly form the text. So that's what we're going to start out with. And we're going to do that by go into the position settings on the plane effector. And we're going to turn up the position Y until the last letter is almost out of the screen. We are also going to set the opacity to -100. So now we have this effector that if we drag it around, you can see that they are being animated from the bottom if we drag it to the right and to the word. And you can also see that because it only have the curve on the outside and not on the inside, then the outside, which is this one, is going to be smooth, and then it's going to go straight down from here. To start animate this now, we need to make some keyframes on the effector layer itself. We'll start by dragging the effector all the way to the left so that none of the letters are visible. And I'm going to take the playhead and put it at the very beginning of the animation. I'm then going to press P on the keyboard to get the position. And I'm going to keyframe that. I'm going to take the playhead to 3 seconds and going to drag this all the way to the right until all my letters are completely visible again. So now we have created this animation, which is great. It's not very smoky yet, but it's going to be. We're going to start out by creating all the keyframes, and then we're going to add these smoky elements afterwards. So that was the in animation. If once again we take a look at the finished file, you can see that it starts by going in, and then it goes out, turns into smoke up in there. But when it comes in, it starts with the first letter, just as we are doing it. And then as it disappears, it also disappears with the first letter first. And that's a bit of a problem, because if we take this effector now and animate it to the left again, it's going to start with the last letter. This is a common problem that I think a lot of users have had. So I'm going to show you how to get around this. One way to get around this would be to add a new effector, but that would slow performance down a little bit, and it would also require to do a lot of settings 2 times instead of just creating everything on the same effector. So what we're going to do is we're going to reuse this effector for the out transition as well. What we need to do is we need to create kind of like a state for the effector. So from 4 seconds, we wanted to start animate out. I'm gonna pick the frame just before 4 seconds. And I'm gonna make a keyframe to the position channel. I am also going to make a keyframe for the position Y parameter on the plane effector. And I'm going to create a keyframe for the angle parameter on the linear fall off. If I select the layer, effector layer now, and press U on the keyboard, we can see all the keyframes. So we can see right now it should say position Y, angle, and position. I then jump to the next frame, which is right at 4 seconds. And I'm going to drag this all the way to the left. Once again. But this time I'm also going to set angle to 180. This essentially is going to flip it around. So if I switch between those 2 frames, you can see that it jumps to the other side, but it also flips, so that now if I start animating it, we're going to animate the S first and the T in the end. The last thing I want to do is I want to change position Y, because in the beginning they came from the bottom. In the out transition we want them to go to the top. So I'm just gonna, whatever value you have in here, I'm just gonna put minus in front of it. And you can of course change this value to whatever you like. But in this case I'm just gonna put minus in front of it, and it's probably gonna work pretty well. Then I'm gonna go to the very last frame, and I'm going to drag this once again all the way to the right. After doing that, you should have an animation that looks something like this. Right, so it doesn't look any smoky, but this is actually all the keyframes we need now. All the smoke effects, we're gonna put them on, and they're gonna be animated almost automatically. So I'm gonna collapse this cloner effector layer again. Now we're going to add some filters, because the letters right now are going up and they are fading out, but we want them to blur out, and we also want them to distort, so it starts to look like smoke. We're gonna hide this cloner system for a moment while we set up the layers. So in this property in the cloner settings, I'm going to disable the eye. That's gonna hide all our cloned layers. I'm also going to hide the effector. And then I'm going to show the first letter here, which was S, and work with that letter to begin with. I'm going to right click it to add an effect, go into Effects and Blur, and I'm going to add a Gaussian blur. The Gaussian blur, of course, creates a blur. So that's good for now. Then I'm also going to right click the layer to add another effect. And this time I'm going to select, where is that distortion? Am I blind? Distort, there you go. And turbulence displays. Then from previous experimentation, I know that we want to set the size to be 120. And we want to set the complexity to 2. Now we can control the amount and make this do something like this. And if we animate this amount and the blur at the same time, we're going to get this this smoky effect out of it. We don't want to make animated too far. As you can see, we're going to get a lot of duplicates. It's not going to be very smoky. Nonetheless, we want to be able to animate this, of course, with our effector. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to reset both of the parameters we're going to animate. And that is the blurriness. We're going to set that to 0. And the amount, we're also going to set that to 0. Then that was the S. All the other letters need to have the exact same filters to it. So I'm going to select the Gaussian blur and the turbulent displays. And I'm going to press Command C, or Control C, of course, if you are on a PC. And then I'm going to select all the other letters and press Command V. I'm going to show my clones again. So in Properties, I'm going to enable this again. And then I'm going to select all my letters down here now. And all these letters down here, they now have the filters we need. We need to update the letters inside the cloner system so that they have the same filters on them. So when they are selected, we're going to click Use Selected Layers. We can't see anything happening right now because we are not animating those parameters and they are both set to 0. But we can now start to add those parameters to our effector. We're going to do that by going into the S that we have down here and expand it and go into Effects, go into Gaussian Blur and select blurriness. So click on it so it gets marked like this. We're then gonna click Add Property. As we do that, it's going to select the effector layer. And we can see now it have a prop 1 called blurriness. We can turn that up. And as we do that, the text is not just going to move and fade out, it's also going to blur out. So that's a good start of creating something that is smoky, is to just blur it out. We then want to add the second parameter, which was down here from our turbulent displays. So I'm going to open that up. And I'm going to select the amount and click Add Property. And just not to get this confusing part down here, I'm going to collapse the letter again. You can see that now we have prop 1 blurriness and prop 2 amount, and we can turn off the amount too. And we're going to get this distorted letters now, where it's somewhat as simple as smoke. To get exactly the same result as I had in my small demo file, I know that I set blurriness to 150 and I set amount to 165. This looks pretty decent, but we're not all the way there. If we imagine that those letters were going up in smoke, they would probably expand a lot. So we want to animate the scale too. That's very easy to set up. We just go down to Properties and turn on Scale. And we go into the scale parameters on our effector, and we turn up the scale X to about 150. And the same with the scale Y. Maybe we want the scale Y to be a little bigger actually. And now as we play the animation, it's really starting to be more smoke-like. So the last thing I would like to do is I would like the smoke to have a different color than the letters. So right now it's white text turning into white smoke. It would be cool if it was white text turning into colored smoke. That is also extremely easy to set up. We simply turn on down again in Properties, Color. And we can now go into Color in our effector settings. And in Tint Color, we can change the color to whatever color we like. So maybe red or green or blue. Once again, to create the same result as previously, I'm going to create a very light red, pinkish colors, whatever that color is called, light pinkish colors. And that's how easy it is to change the color of the smoke. And that's pretty much everything I've done to create this transition. So it should be pretty easy for everybody to recreate if they have Cloners+Effectors. One last thing I want to show you is color grading. I'm not gonna go in any depth with it, but if you look at the finished result, we can see that it's quite different in color. So I'm just gonna recreate that really quickly to show you how I did it. First, I'm going to add a background, and I've already created a background that I know works. So I'm going to use this background. And then I'm going to create a adjustment layer on top of everything. So I'm going to Layer, New, and Adjustment Layer. I'm going to rename this layer Grade. When I do all these small, quick experimentations, it's great to have a tool that is easy when it comes to color grading. The tool I usually use is Magic Bullet Looks, which of course you have to purchase from Red Giant. The reason why I use it is that it just saves me a lot of time. It has a lot of presets, but all of those presets can be completely adjusted, so you can always get exactly the result you're after. In this case, I'm just going to take a very big shortcut. I'm just going to select this railroad right here and say, yep, that is perfect. That is exactly what I want. And I'm going to say OK to that. And we're now going to get a completely different result, which have a bit of diffusion and some noise and some color changing. So yeah, that's everything I did. The last thing I want to mention is that this was just my little setup. You can of course create your own setups. You can add more filters to it if you like, and you can just go into the effector and you can play around with all these settings. So maybe you want it to be more blurry or less blurry. You can just adjust these to get exactly what you want. Maybe you don't want to affect the position at all. Just switch off the position and you can create exactly the transition that you are after for your project. Alright, so that was the entire tutorial. If you like to see more tutorials, you should follow my YouTube channel or my Vimeo channel. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram. On Instagram, I'm going to be sharing a lot of small experiments that I'm also uploading the source files for. So I'm not going to do tutorials for all of those. I'm just going to upload them, and if you want to test them out, you can just download the source files and see how everything was made. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you in a later tutorial.